Breaking news out of the NFL, where the league office has signed off on a new concussion protocol proposed by the Players Association. The modified protocols will take effect on Sunday. They require any player showing gross motor instability to be taken out of the game and tested for a concussion. Meanwhile, Roger Goodell announced that the NFL's joint investigation found that the Dolphins did not violate concussion protocols in their handling of Tua Tagovailoa. Goodell called the old protocols insufficient, but noted that the Dolphins followed standard operating procedure. The NFL also noted that Tagovailoa did not exhibit any signs of a concussion during his locker room exam or during the ensuing week. So they are adding this word, it's a medical term, ataxia, to mandatory no-go symptoms. That is defined as a disruption of balance, motor skills, or speech, an inability to coordinate voluntary muscular movements that is symptomatic of some central nervous system disorders and injuries and not due to muscle weakness. So they are going to be looking for this in players during concussion protocols. That is what the takeaway is here for that. Now, Tua Tagovailoa, according to our reporter, senior NFL insider Jonathan Jones, with the new concussion protocols, Tua would not have been allowed to re-enter the game September 25th against the Bills. So that is a huge takeaway here in this news. And we welcome in CBS Sports senior NFL insider Jonathan Jones. Jonathan, I touched on the news there that you have reported. What more can you tell us?
Well, yeah, it's fascinating, and it's obviously quite complex, because what you have with Tua Tagovailoa back on September 25th against the Buffalo Bills was he exhibited, as we all saw, the gross motor instability. What this review found was that the team doctor, along with the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant, when they checked Tua out, that they did not see any signs or symptoms of a concussion. It is important to note that the league cannot definitively say with 100% certainty that he did not have a concussion, because we, of course, do not have any sort of objective test that can clearly state whether someone does or does not have a concussion if it is within, let's just call it, a gray area. However, in this sort of examination of Tua, they determined that his gross motor instability that we saw there was due to a previous back injury. We understand that. Well, the doctor and the independent doctor, the team physician and the independent doctor, did not examine Tua for a back injury. Other members of the medical staff earlier in the game had examined him for that, but that is one sort of issue. But the NFL and NFLPA in this sort of joint review and statement said that while the protocol was followed to the letter of the law, that the protocol needed some updating. That is where we get the term ataxia. And Hakeem, you talked about it earlier, but it essentially is about that sort of same or similar gross motor instability that would be caused due to some neurological issue. Now, what we don't have anymore in the concussion checklist, under the no-go, it was gross motor instability. But if it's not neurologically caused, which they had determined in Tua's case that it was not, that you can re-enter the game. There's no more gross motor instability on the checklist. Instead, that has been replaced with ataxia. And there is no, hey, suffer ataxia, but if we determine it was a back injury instead, you return to the game. No more. Once they have identified on video that whatever that hit to the head, let's say the head hit the turf, let's say there was a helmet-to-helmet hit, maybe there was a neck that was hit, or a shoulder maybe, but it looks like a head, and you sort of show those signs of instability, you stumble around, you will be removed from the game, and there's no opportunity for you to return to the game. You are essentially in the concussion protocol at that point. So under these revised protocols, if they had been in place on September 25th, Tua would not have been allowed back into the game. That's according to the NFL chief medical doctor, Alan Sills, and that's what he told us earlier today. So with all of that, it's a small and a slight tweak to these protocols, a very important one, a subtle one here that obviously hopes to prevent anything like what we saw on September 25th from happening again.
Jonathan, you know that hindsight is 20/20. But why do you think that it took this event, this situation, for the NFL and the Players Association to update the concussion protocols?
Yeah, It's a fair question, and I understand that question. Certainly, I think medical professionals and experts, and even Chief Medical Dr. Alan Sills spoke about it earlier when he fielded this very similar question. That medicine is ever evolving. That the protocols, as proud that as the NFL is of these protocols, that they are not perfect. That they cannot be perfect. That it will be inexact. We know the phrase inexact science, and certainly as it relates to concussions, unfortunately, it is not an exact science. There is no way for us to determine whether someone certainly does have or does not have a concussion. And so what Alan Sills sort of called upon was the NFL Players Association to get along with the NFL and sort of spend resources, if you will, on a blood test or a saliva test where you can sort of see these enzymes, these cardiac enzymes, or these biomarkers that can best or better determine what is definitively and objectively a concussion or not. But we're still very, very far away from that. Ultimately, what you had in the protocols before was gross motor instability. And if that instability was not neurologically caused, they can re-enter the game. What you now have is ataxia. And I'll tell you this, Hakeem, Dr. Alan Sills even noted this. There may be some times where a guy stumbles because of an ankle injury, and maybe he has no signs or symptoms of a concussion. But if there was some sort of hit to the head at some other point, that person may be pulled from the game. If there is a legitimate back injury, that person may be pulled from the game. We may very well see, and I don't think it's going to run rampant. I do believe that spotters and physicians are going to use best judgment here. But we may very well see some scenarios and cases where players who are not concussed by most measures, or any measure really, are still pulled from the game to be more conservative, to be on the safe side here with the addition of ataxia into the concussion protocol.
But ultimately, that's what we want. We want the league to be more cautious with the players. They are human beings. We root for them as fans. We would want them to be healthy when they're playing the game. Isn't that sort of what we're trying to accomplish here? We want more. We want them to be more conscious, to be more conservative in these situations, because you watched what happened to Tua. I watched what happened to Tua. We are not doctors, but I think that you and I would agree that he probably shouldn't have come back in that game, and he probably shouldn't have played on Thursday night.
Well, I think the NFL is sort of tacitly admitting with these updated protocols that they would agree that he should not have been back into that game. And they're saying that that their protocols were followed, that ultimately the protocols as they were written in late September ultimately fell short. And so they are improving them as they have done over the many years. And so it's difficult for me to say whether he should or should not have played on Thursday. I mean, if this were a friend of mine, I would have certainly said, hey, maybe take it easy and don't play 4 days from now. But, according to the Miami Dolphins, according to the NFL, and along with the NFLPA, this is the players union, right? They're all saying that he did not exhibit any signs or symptoms of a concussion on Monday during his mandatory evaluation, or on Tuesday and Wednesday when he was continuing to be checked. And so, if he doesn't have a concussion, then he doesn't have a concussion. But again, no one can definitively say that at this point. In fact, Chief Medical Dr. Alan Sills said, quote, "It's impossible to state whether he did or did not at the time, but best practices," and these doctors that they employed, or the independent doctor to whom was paid a stipend, who was also fired by the NFLPA for what they viewed was several mistakes that he made. The NFL, in their first real public comments about that, disagreed pretty strongly with his firing. Ultimately, they determined that he was safe enough to go back out there on the field.
Fortunately, we have course correction. The league signing off on new concussion protocols proposed by the Players Association. CBS Sports senior NFL insider Jonathan Jones with the latest here on CBS Sports HQ. Jonathan, thank you.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.